Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give people a couple of minutes to get joined, and then we'll get started.
People coming in thick and fast, are they, Rebecca?
Yeah, yes, I can see them all logging in now.
Oh, terrific, terrific.
Just one more minute and we'll get started.
Oh, hi, everyone that's saying hello.
Oh. I can see Kathleen is typing. That's my mum's name, but I don't think my mum's watching. Okay.
Bonjour, bonjour. Yeah, pronoun da, as we say in Wales. Pronoun da.
Okay, we'll get started. So, okay, let me just get started on the slides. So, I'm Rebecca, and I'm joined today by the renowned Ian Holloway. In our Power Hour today, we'll be going through some of the latest government announcements before we answer some of your pre-submitted questions. If you do have any questions at any point, if you can just pop them in the chat, and we'll try and find some time at the end to answer those. If you're using PayFit and you have a PayFit specific question, you're probably better off raising a ticket through our help center because they'll have access to be able to help you a bit better than I can off the top of my head. Finally, there will be a recording sent to you at the end, so you'll be able to refer back to it at a later date. I'll let Ian introduce himself before I explain who I am.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Ian Holloway. God, I seem to have been around forever in the payroll and reward profession. And I'm sort of not bigging myself up, but I've done bureau, I've done public sector, and I've done private sector and small companies, large companies. And to be honest, if you ask me a payroll question, there's nothing I hope that actually think, oh, I've never heard of that. And that's quite an achievement. And I feel quite comfortable. If you say this, I think, oh my God, what on earth are they talking about? That hasn't happened recently. But yeah, I'm very big on apprenticeships, level 3, level 5 payroll apprenticeships. So I'm the Trailblazer chair there. And I will pass back to Rebecca. That's enough about me.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, I'm Rebecca. I'm the payroll expert at PayFit. For the past 13 years, I've been involved in lots of different payroll roles, from payroll bureaus to software development. But what really excites me is being able to share knowledge. I love to simplify complex ideas and make them understandable for everybody. And I can't wait to share what we've been learning recently. So firstly, we're going to cover the latest updates from the government, and I'm going to ask Ian to talk us through what legislation day is.
LDAY, really excited, abbreviated to LDAY. So short of the budget and the autumn statement, that LDAY is a really important day because we get a raft of draft legislation that's for the finance bill, so the next finance bill. So not only with the draft legislation, we get explanatory notes, we get a policy paper as well. And all of the draft legislation is open for consultation. So if you look at the draft legislation, you think, oh, well, this is a load of rubbish, or they've spelt something wrong, they've put a comma and it should be a full stop or something like that. It's an opportunity for us to actually comment. And the government is quite good, HMRC generally are quite good on taking on board what people have to say. What I always say about LDAY is it's the publication of draft legislation for the UK finance bill. So that we mustn't forget that there's a finance bill in Scotland, there's one in Wales, and soon, hopefully, there'll be one in Northern Ireland if they can get a devolved administration going there. So LDAY, publicised before it, is a big thing. So not only do we get the draft legislation, but we get some new consultations and responses to consultations that have been ongoing as well. And there was one glaring omission. I was hoping there'd be a response to one consultation. It was a glaring omission, and I think we're going to cover, somebody's raised a question, so we're going to cover that later on. But so have a look. If you see the draft legislation, put into your search engine legislation day. There's a page devoted to it on gov.uk. But hopefully Rebecca and I will go through the important bits for payroll and reward.
Yes, we will. Okay. So on legislation day, the government responded to a consultation addressing data gaps that can give HMRC a better understanding of the employers and their employees. Out of the 6 identified gaps, 3 of them won't be pursued due to the work involved and the data potentially being unreliable. So the 3 that won't be included are business sectors, which would require self-employed individuals to choose a code that indicates their business sector, an occupational code for those workers who are self-employed, but also for employees on a payroll. On the payroll, it would have been reported on the FPS by the employer. Employers would have also been required to report the location of each employee's employment on the FPS, for example, London or Blackpool. They would also need to report the locations of the business, though, for example, if they operate in multiple sites. However, the government are only going to proceed with the following 3 measures. The first 2 of these relate to self-employment. So we're looking at dividends paid to shareholders in owner-managed businesses and the start and end dates of self-employment. This was previously voluntary, but it will now become mandatory on the self-assessment return. And the last point specifically relates to payroll. On the full payment submission, employers will be required to report the actual hours that employees work. It's important to note that the implementation of these 3 final measures won't be required any earlier than the 2025-2026 tax year. So in relation to the hours worked, as you may be aware already, we report on the FPS the hours worked. However, the hours are estimated and they're banded. HMRC use these to cross-reference the hours on the FPS against the hours reported by those people claiming working tax credits. The proposal aims to remove the current bands and instead report on 2 types of working hours. So for hourly paid employees, will be required to report the actual hours that they've worked. This information shouldn't be an issue because we already use it to calculate their pay. The second will be for employees with reasonably stable contractual hours, will need to report those hours. But this is where it gets a bit tricky, because if you imagine an employee's contractual hours might change if they move from full-time to part-time, so we need to report the actual hours that they worked in that month, or they might receive a salary for their contracted hours and then work overtime in addition to that. So that's extra hours that need to be reported. So we need to make sure that our payroll softwares can handle these scenarios. Currently, Band E allows employers to indicate that they can't provide the contractual or the actual hours worked. With these proposed changes, we imagine that it would be replaced with a reason why they're unable to tell HMRC those hours.
I think it's, sorry, Rebecca, I think it's really interesting. I'm glad that they've ignored those first 3, the occupational codes and the industry classification codes. What a palaver, you know, so-and-so is a bookkeeper, so-and-so is a payroll manager. Then they go down to a payroll assistant. Oh, suddenly they're a cleaner. Oh no, they're a caterer or something like that. What a palaver that data administration would have been, the collection and the burden of putting it in to the payroll systems for reporting on the FPS. I can see this, and I can see the hours classifications, you know, the A to E. I can see the logic behind HMRC wanting this information. However, you know, you've got actual hours worked, which we enter into the system if someone's hourly paid. That's it stored in one part of the system. But contractual hours, Ian Holloway's on 30 hours, 20 hours or whatever, that's stored in another part of the system. And contractual hours are not actually used to calculate my salary. I'm probably on a 12th of my annual salary. So software developers currently, where they've got one place to pick up the data. Now they've got two pays. Well, I've got to pick it up from a pay element for the actual hours, and I've got to pick it from there for the contractual hours. And if the employer can't report the actual hours or the contractual hours, they're going to have to say, well, this is the reason I can't report the actual or the contractual hours. And I don't know if can't be bothered will be one of the options there. But I think that's really interesting, really interesting.
I think you're right in that things like being able to record somebody's occupation, what happens if they are working one job on one site doing one thing and then working on another site doing another thing? Do we need to then separate out how many hours are worked against each occupation?
Absolutely. Just absolutely don't know. Possibly someone in the payroll, if they're sort of like they're a teacher and they're also an evening class, maybe they have to have two employments in a payroll system.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
Yeah.
gone for the time being. And I think, yeah, for the time being, it's gone. But I think the responses to the consultation were such that so many people came back and said, well, you'll be getting all this data, but there's a lot of employers that will actually just not make it up. But you can't trust the reliability of that information, because Ian Holloway could be a payroll manager 1 minute, and then I could be a window cleaner the next minute. I could be a bookkeeper the next month, and then I could be a farrier. And employers are not going to do it. Try as they might, they're not going to do it. Especially like bookkeepers and accountants, where it's hard enough to get the flipping name of the employee, let alone whereabouts do they work, what do they do. Oh yeah, and there's about 6,000 of these SOC codes, they call them occupational and sick codes, the industry. It's thousands and thousands of them, and employers are going to quickly. Oh God, I must do the payroll. They're going, oh yeah, that looks good. That's good.
Yeah.
It's not happening. It's not happening.
Yeah, good. I can only imagine from a payroll perspective having to code in 600 different entries for a customer to choose from every time they set up an employee. So
yeah, absolutely. No, it's good. But this legislation as well, the draft legislation, which is on there's a link on the screen. That's interesting. If you look at the draft legislation, all the draft legislation says it changes the PAYE regulations, and all it says is HMRC may make regulations, and that's the important part about the finance bill. It's enabling legislation, and that's really all it does. It enables something to happen in the future. So when you get an act of parliament, all the act of parliament actually says is this can happen in the future, but operationally, how it will happen, that's going to be set by secondary legislation.
Yeah, that's true. One more thing I wanted to mention on this is that in terms of tracking the hours that employees are working, so it's not just for working tax credits, but it's also for minimum wage and living wage regulations. We need to be keeping hold of the actual hours that employees are working to make sure they're meeting those regulations. We also need to be checking that employees aren't working more than 48 hours in a week. So yeah, these changes will be would be implemented in the 2025-2026 tax year, so that would give us enough time to start collating that data and updating the software and processes. I will pass over to Ian to talk us through some of the other changes we should be aware of.
Oh, right. Okay. There was a piece of draft legislation that came out about tax avoidance, the Promoters of Tax Avoidance Schemes, POTAS, POTAS, Promoters of Tax Avoidance Schemes, many different tax avoidance schemes. And if HMRC tell somebody in charge, or someone they deem to be a promoter of a tax avoidance scheme, HMRC will tell them to stop. The legislation says, well, if that person that's been told to stop doesn't stop, you can go to prison for 14 years now. So it's previously 7. Now every penalty is gone up to 14 years. So that anything to do with tax evasion and then tax avoidance is the UK government trying to close the tax gap. And the UK tax gap is HMRC are charged at the start of each year with collecting 100%. At the end of that year, they look up how much they have actually collected. And the tax gap for the last one was 21-22. The tax gap was 4.8%. So HMRC wanted 100%, but they fell short by 4.8%. The reason, say the UK government, could be tax avoidance and tax evasion. And that's why they're trying to address that. Then you've got the two pension scheme tax relief mechanisms. You've got a net pay arrangement and the relief at source. Palaver, absolute palaver. Already totally misnamed, and it's no wonder that nobody understands who they are. The finance bill draft legislation concerned relief at source. Pension administration for pension scheme administrators, not payroll. But I think it's worth going through the announcements for the net pay arrangement. And this was all to do with the anomaly, the low pay people anomaly. You get tax relief through the payroll or in a net pay scheme. However, if you don't pay tax, there's no tax to give you relief. So what HMRC have said is for contributions starting the 24-25 tax year, we will look at the contributions and we will pay top-up payments to those low earners. That's how they refer to them, to those low earners, i.e. under the personal allowance, not paying tax. We'll give top-up payments and pay that payment by the end of the following tax year. So you might make a pension contribution in April 2024. You won't get the top-up payment until the end of the following tax year. So they've already announced that that's not going to change, not changing payroll systems. What's announced here was a progression from what they announced at the budget in, when was the budget? March 2023. They said relief at source pension scheme administrators have to apply. So if you've got a relief at source pension scheme, they have to apply for the tax relief to HMRC once annually at the basic rate. So the basic rate in the UK, basic rate in Wales, basic rate in Scotland. So, but we're going to go digital. And instead of pension scheme administrators applying annually for this tax relief, which is then added to the pension pot for individuals, instead of annually, we're going to digital. We're going to do marvelous things with our system and let pension scheme administrators claim that tax relief monthly. That will be interesting. Doesn't affect payroll administration. It doesn't affect payroll administration, but I think that those both things are good for payroll administrators and payroll professionals to be aware of. The last one, it's complicated now, the high income child benefit charge. It doesn't mean that the child benefit is actually stopped when somebody exceeds £50,000. What it means is when HMRC perceives someone to be a high earner using that £50,000 threshold, which hasn't changed forever, when they perceive somebody to be a high earner and they're claiming child benefit, for every £100 over £50,000, they will reduce the value of child benefit by 1%, and they will claim that as income tax. It really, and that will be claimed and reported via the self-assessment return. Really complicated. And I can understand HMRC saying it's complicated for us to administer on an annual basis through self-assessment. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and work out how we can collect the high income child benefit charge on a per pay period basis by reducing the tax code instead. So it makes total sense to do that, and it doesn't affect payroll. But I think it's good to be aware of that high income child benefit charge and what a administrative issue it is.
Yeah, I think, it's important for us to know that that might be why an employee is getting a tax code change, because I know we'll often be asked, why is my tax code different? And we'll normally say something like, maybe you got taxable benefits, but it's also important to consider that as well.
Absolutely. There's another thing. I was talking to somebody this morning. There's because HMRC have released a new tool, how your tax code is calculated. and it gives very, very generic reasons. Oh, I did it, and the reason you're on this tax code is because you live in Wales, and you're a Welsh taxpayer, and you're not entitled to the full personal allowances for whatever reason. But it didn't break it down. So there's better places to go for a breakdown of your tax code. But the whole point of the conversation was, frequently we as payroll professionals try and explain someone's tax codes to them, but we shouldn't be doing that at all. It's a personal responsibility. If they want to know where to go to their personal tax account, and that will tell them how the tax code is calculated.
Exactly. Yeah. It's one of those things where we can push back. Otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Next, so other recent announcements regarding parental leave. So the Neonatal Care Act 2023 will make amendments to employment law, which is applicable to Great Britain only and not Northern Ireland. The Act received royal assent in May 2023, but the corresponding regulations are expected to be effective for the tax year 2025-2026.
Yes.
The aim of the Act is to grant employees a day one right to statutory leave if their child receives neonatal care in the 28 days following their birth. There's also a conditional right for this leave to be paid, and we'll receive more details on the payments once we have those regulations. And just to add, that neonatal care leave and pay is in addition to any other type of parental pay and leave that they might have been eligible for. In regards to paternity leave, so the government responded to the Good Work Plan consultation. They made proposals to change the current paternity leave guidance. They're proposing that instead of one block of 1 or 2 weeks, that the employee can take those 2 weeks separately. So one block in, for example, week 1, one block in week 51. They can take those 2 weekly blocks separately. And instead of having to take the leave within 8 weeks of the baby's birth, they can, or the placement date for adoption, they can take it within 52 weeks. And instead of needing to provide 15 weeks notice, they'll only need to provide 4 weeks notice. I will pass over to Ian to talk about.
Can I say something there? Actually, there's 2 provisions. Actually, you're absolutely right about. I'm entitled to this. You give your employer 28 days notice of the date that you want to take the leave, but still at the qualifying week or the matching week for adoption, the employer that's eligible for paternity leave will have to notify their employer, dear Mr. Employer, it's the qualifying week, it's the matching week, I am entitled to paternity leave, and it's 28 days before they want to take it. So there'll be 2 notifications there. And I think, I'm not going to get political, but I think both of those are really interesting. But one, that they're applying Great Britain only, which is a palaver. So you've got employees in Northern Ireland that might have a contract written under their employment rights legislation, which is the Order rather than the Rights Act. They're not entitled to those things. You've got employees in Great Britain that will be entitled to those things. Therefore, you've got software that will have to do it 2 different ways. Plus, both of those things are enabling legislation, or will be enabling legislation. Plus, also, they were both in the Conservative Party manifesto, and getting those things through by the time of the next general election, which I think we're going to talk about in a second, or I'm probably going to waffle on about in a second. Getting both of those things through will enable the current government to go into the next general election campaigning period saying, we said we'd do this in 2019 and we've done it. And that's really important for them.
Yeah. No, I think with the notice period, I thought I'd read that they essentially need to tell their employer that they will be taking paternity leave or adoption leave, but then they need to give notice when they'll actually intend to take it.
Yeah, the way I read it, you notify of eligibility. Dear Mr. Employer, I'm eligible. And then, so the employer would say, okay, he or she is going to take paternity leave at some time in the future, and the father in inverted commas will then only have to give 28 days notice. So, as I understand, it's 2 notifications, which is a palaver for HR, probably, who'll be getting these notifications, but it's good for the parent. And the whole Conservative manifesto said, we are going to make it easier for fathers to take paternity leave. Well, those changes there will make it easier for fathers to take paternity leave. It doesn't necessarily make it easier for employers who will have all of these notifications coming in, and all of these people that, as you said, take 1 week in week 1, and then, I won't have my other week, I'll have it in week 51. That's administratively more difficult for employers, but it's better for employees. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Kathleen's just said, surely the employer will know someone's eligible more so than the employee, which is completely true.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
employer will obviously know a lot more than the employee. And I think we've seen that with shared parental pay and leave, where a lot of employees aren't aware of what their rights are to those types of leaves.
No, absolutely right. And another thing I wanted to say about that, ACAS, which is the Employment Rights Conciliation thing in Great Britain, not in Northern Ireland, they'll have a code of practice. So they'll have to update their code of practice on how to handle paternity leave and pay requests. I would have thought they would be updated. I haven't seen anything out at the moment, but I thought they would update their code of practice. And of course, employers are going to have to update their policies and procedures. Currently, you can take 2 weeks, either a block of 1 week, and if you say, I want 1 week, and then you say, I want 2 weeks, they say, oh no, you told us 1. That's tough. You've got to take it within 56 days of the child's birth or the child's placement. That's got to change. So employers all over have got to be revisiting all of their policies and procedures and communicating that information to their employees.
Yeah. At least we're giving everybody advance notice with a couple of years to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I'll let you
talk. Good government.
Yeah. I'll let you talk about flexible working.
Okie dokie. This was the Flexible Employment Relations Flexible Working Act, I think it was called, brought by a Labour member of Parliament as a private members bill. That's really important as well. Private members bill. The government have said, or the current government said, we are going to make it easier for people to take flexible working. And back in 2019, Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, said there's going to be an employment bill, which has never manifested itself. But a private member came along and said, no, I'm going to do that bit of the employment bill that you want to do. So good for this private member. And I think it's really important, the changes. Again, ACAS are consulting on their code of practice. It's about the right to request flexible working, only in Great Britain, the right to request it. It doesn't mean it's an automatic right to have it. It's not in place at the moment. So that the legislation that went in is enabling legislation. It enables further regulations to be made. This will happen from sometime in 2024. So there's already a right to request to work flexibly. This will improve that. So you now don't have to serve that 26 weeks. You can now start with an employer on a Wednesday, and on Thursday, on Wednesday afternoon, you can say, I want to work flexibly. So you can start, you're 5 days a week, and then you can say, oh, no, actually, I only want to work 1. Okay. Only 1 request can be submitted to the employer within 12 months. This legislation and the future regulations will allow for 2 of those. The employer currently has to respond within 3 months. Now they have to respond within 2 months, and there'll be a statutory obligation for employers to consult with their employee, not just write them a letter saying no. They must have a consultation, and it's these enabling regulations that we need, this updated code of practice from ACAS as well, how employers should and must, what is best practice and what's legislatively necessary for employers to do. And carers leave as well, both in the Conservative Party manifesto, carers leave, Great Britain, poor people in Northern Ireland. This is a statutory right for employees to request another type of statutory leave entitlement. It's unpaid. Enabling legislation will give us all of the detail, but currently, if there's somebody caring, and there'll be a definition of caring as well, which we haven't got, but if you're caring, so you're eligible, you will be able to say to your employer, I've got a statutory right to take at least 1 week per year. The employer might say, oh no, take as much time as you need. But I should imagine that's a little bit more difficult for smaller employers. But the employee has got to be in a position to say, but I've got a statutory right to this. Just like there's a statutory right to take holiday, there'd be a statutory right to take carers leave. Only in Great Britain, poor people in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, so we're going to go through some of the pre-submitted questions.
Okay.
If you have any questions at all, please pop them in the chat and we can come to them. So the first question I'm going to ask Ian is, what is actually happening regarding holiday leave and pay?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now this actually, when I talked about it earlier on, and the government said, we are going to publish responses to consultations that have closed. So I'm thinking, oh, really, we're going to get the answer to this. Wasn't there. And when I looked this morning, it still wasn't there. So these 2 consultations have still not been responded to by the current government. Again, in Great Britain, not Northern Ireland, because working time is devolved, as is employment legislation, to Northern Ireland. So the first consultation, January, 11th of January off the top of my head, don't hold me to that, was to do with the holiday entitlement for people that work irregularly or people that work for part of the year. Maybe they're paid for the whole of the year, but they only work for part of the year. And that all stemmed, if you look at the government consultation, it all stemmed from this Harper versus Brazil case that went to the Supreme Court. And Mrs. Brazel, she was a music teacher, a peripatetic music teacher, I think she was, worked for part of the year, but the employer paid her for the whole of the whole of the year. And the employer said, well, you only work for part of the year, so you should only get part of the 5.6 weeks. But the High Court and the Supreme Court said, well, no, just because she's a part-year worker, there's nothing in legislation to say that she can't get the full 5.6 weeks. So what the government have done, they haven't said it overtly, but what they've actually done is, well, if the legislation isn't expressingly say, well, if you only work for part of the year, you only get part of the year's holiday entitlement. If the legislation doesn't say it, we're going to change the legislation. Also, that talked about 12.07%, so the rolled up holiday pay for those kind of workers. The second consultation was more exciting for me, because it highlighted, I think, the fact that when you look at holiday leave entitlement and therefore knocking on to pay, there's actually 3 blocks of holiday leave. So you've got your Euro leave derived from the European Union directive, working time directive, and that's what they call Euro leave, your 4 weeks, your 20 days if you're a full-time worker, and the 1.6 weeks, which is UK domestic leave, introduced in 2007, I think, 2007, ages and ages ago. And that's your 8 days. So that's actually sort of bringing in your bank holidays. That's what it was all about. So, and then on top of those 2 blocks, you've got another block where your employer will say, well, actually between Christmas and New Year, you don't have to come in. Don't take it out of your holiday entitlement. We'll give you those days off. So that's your over and above leave. So that remains unchanged. But this domestic leave and the Euro leave will be merged into 1 block. So there'll be no need now for an employer, if they do, and I don't think they do, to say you're taking Euro leave for that week or you're taking domestic leave. And that's really important and confusing for employers and software developers, because Euro leave has to be paid at the value of normal remuneration. And that's been subject to all of this case law. You must include commission, you must include overtime, regular overtime, contractual overtime, voluntary overtime, bonuses, all that kind of thing. The 1.6 weeks, the domestic leave, refers to employment legislation. So that must be paid at the value of a week's pay as per the Employment Rights Act. So merging the two blocks gives us a single entitlement. And the consultation says, well, how do you think this should be paid? Bearing in mind that it's ever so complicated for us to look back at all the different case laws over the year that says you must include this, you must include this, you must include that. So I think it will be really good. A single block, it makes total sense to me, total block at a single rate of pay, which may be the value of a week's pay, or maybe normal remuneration, or it might be something different. But this one talks about bringing rolled up holiday pay at 12.07% for all workers. And I think there's a lot of employers, a lot of businesses out there that wanted the 12.07%, used the 12.07% calculation and rolled up holiday pay, and were a bit disappointed when it was ruled unlawful years and years ago. So that's the two consultations. We haven't had a response to those. But I think I was saying to you on the telephone, I said, I can't believe that the government is going to not respond to these soon, because they're going to want to go into a general election campaign saying we changed the working time regulations, which were derived from the European Union. So we've taken advantage of the opportunities of Brexit. They're going to want to do that. So I think it will happen. When I look at the way that this was previously implemented, and employment law often, not always, often changes the 1st of October. I wouldn't be surprised if this is brought in October 2024. I don't know. I haven't got a crystal ball, but I wouldn't be surprised. Sorry, I've gone on too long.
No, that's fine. I think that's really interesting. I think that's probably one of the biggest topics that we have at the moment. Because it's just so up in the air. But yeah, it's very interesting. There was a question from Kathleen earlier on pensions. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll back up. So Kathleen has said, so are you saying that they'll be getting the basic rate tax added back to their pension in the same way as everyone else? And I assume that's in relation to those employees who don't get it through the payroll.
On the net pay arrangement. So in the net pay arrangement, they will get it through the payroll. So the pension contribution will be net of basic rate tax relief. But the ones that are not getting the tax relief are the low paid. So you're not getting tax relief if you don't actually pay tax. And the government have recognised that as an anomaly, and that's what they're going to correct. So if you pay tax, it will carry on as normal, and your employer or your pension scheme will effectively give you that. If you don't pay tax and you're not getting tax relief, your employer can't give you that. Your pension scheme can't give you that. HMRC will give you that money as a check. And presumably, the employee will say, oh, I've got a little top-up payment. I've got some tax relief. What I'll do is I'll pay it to my pension scheme. Or shall I buy some shopping? Does that answer your question?
We'll go on to the next question, but we can come back to that if we need to.
Okay.
I think actually Kathleen's typing. We'll give her a second. No pressure, Kathleen. She says she gathers it will be the shopping.
Yeah, no, I think so too.
So next question, I'll answer this one. So if someone receives a pay increase during their maternity leave after the relevant period, do we have to recalculate their average weekly earnings? And does the same apply to adoption? So if an employee is on maternity leave, and they receive a pay increase at any time between the start of the relevant period and the end of their maternity leave, which includes the unpaid part as well, then we need to apply the alabaster ruling. And the alabaster ruling is where we have to recalculate the employee's average earnings as if that salary increase was applied at the start of the relevant period. That means that any statutory maternity pay that they receive is based on their pay increase. The alabaster ruling only applies to maternity pay, though, and not adoption. The same with any other parental leaves, it doesn't apply to those. So if an employee receives a pay increase when they're about to go on adoption leave or even the other types of parental leave, then it won't impact their statutory pay unless they actually receive that pay increase at some point during the relevant period.
Yeah, it's got to. I think the date has got to be effective for sometime in that relevant period, which is the 8 weeks prior to the 15th week before the expected week of confinement or childbirth, regardless of whether or not it's paid sort of like 6 months down the line. But it's all to do with the effective date in adoption, shared paternity, and bereavement as well. But it's funny, I can remember when this came out, because the way that it applies to adoption, paternity, shared bereavement is what's called the Gillespie rule. And do you remember? You're far too young to remember Gillespie, Margaret Gillespie. And the European Court of Justice said, well, do you know, it's absolutely fair that, you know, she did receive a pay increase in her relevant period, and if she'd have got it at the time, it would have affected her average weekly earnings. So they changed the law because of this case law. We had to follow this case law. Then Michelle Alabaster came along and said, oh, I got a pay increase in week 51. My relevant earnings, my relevant period should be recalculated. Gillespie and the European Court of Justice said, yeah, no, we agree. Doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense at the time. I struggled to make sense of it. Get a pay increase in week 51, but you have to apply it as if it was the first week of the relevant period. Margaret Gillespie, I could understand. Michelle Alabaster, I don't understand. And I don't understand either why the UK government hasn't done anything about this.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I really don't.
I think the only reason I obviously tried to make sense of it, and my thought was perhaps they were always going to have that pay increase, and it was kind of withheld until they knew that the employee was coming back to work, and that's why they've said, well, actually, it's not fair for you to kind of withhold that salary increase when she would have had it in the last year if that was the case. That's the only way I could kind of make sense of it.
Yeah, I think you've got to come up with some rationale. Makes sense of it. But then another query that I always get with statutory maternity pay is, well, what constitutes a pay increase? Well, obviously, if somebody goes from £7,000 to £14,000, you know, or a 5% increase, well, that is a pay increase. And globally, or sort of like company-wide, car allowances are all increasing from £350 a month to £400 a month. That's a pay increase. But another pay increase is when the national minimum wage and the national living wage changes around April time. That's a pay increase. Well, what a flipping palaver this is for employers, because in that long period between the start of the relevant period and the end of statutory maternity leave, it could be that there's 2 Aprils. So the poor employer is having to recalculate once, and then the next year having to recalculate again. Oh, it's a palaver. Really good question, though. Really good question.
Yeah. Catherine said those idiots don't have to do the calculations and the admin for all of that.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't use that word. I agree. I absolutely agree with you. I fail to understand it, but I can understand the Gillespie rule that applies to all of the statutory payments apart from statutory maternity pay. I can understand that. The Alabaster rule, I don't understand it at all. I don't even remember the year. I think I was probably about 10. Years and years ago, it was the 1990s, but we've been doing it ever since. Does payroll software do it? Does PayFit's do it? Does it allow you to change the average weekly earnings calculation?
It allows you to override the maternity pay. So we have a Help Center article that explains how to do the calculation and add on the extra amount in the current month.
Right. I mean, that's good. I know so many pieces of software. I've heard of so many pieces of software that won't allow to do it. I said, well, if you want to pay an additional amount of statutory maternity pay, set up a new pay element.
Mhm.
So they set up a new pay element, and which is fine. It does pay the woman that amount of money, but 92% of that you can claim back. So that new pay element will not allow the reclaim of 92%. So it's not the ideal solution. So if you can override average weekly earnings or SMP payable,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. I have definitely seen in other softwares where you would set it up as a pay element and then you'd have to override your EPS every month to
Yeah,
claim that higher amount back from HMRC, which obviously if you forget about it, then your HMRC account then doesn't balance.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Kathleen has said, so what happens to the qualifying week? What is the point of the qualifying week if it won't be used if a pay increase is given? So that's a good point.
Well, I suppose so, but well, yeah, I suppose you could argue, but a lot hinges off of the qualifying week, doesn't it? And notifications have to be given at the qualifying week. But I can understand what you're saying. What is the point in maternity cases? Yeah, actually, what is the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can I can understand it. Yeah, I can understand that question. Yeah.
I guess it gives you at least a starting point. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And software needs something. Importantly, software needs something, doesn't it? To
Yeah.
look at any payday. So it's the 8 paydays before or in, isn't it? The qualifying week. So software needs something.
Mhm.
Because software is sort of like dependent on rules, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not playing down the role of software, because thank goodness we have it. Otherwise, we'd have to do all of this manually.
Yeah.
And those days of manual calculations are well gone for me.
We'll go through one more of the submitted questions, and then I can see some others have been asked in the chat. So another one for you, Ian, because I know that you
Uh-huh.
like to talk about this. Can you tell us what might happen in the King's Speech on the 7th of November this year?
Well, I think so. I can't predict what's going to be in, but I think what we have to do is look at the legislation that's going through the House of Parliament now. Bearing in mind that the government, the Commons is on recess, the House of Lords is on recess, and they come back 4th of September, around 4th of September. They come back for a couple of weeks, then they go on conference recess. Then Parliament, the current period of Parliament, will be dissolved. So in actual fact, it's about 5 weeks after they come back from recess, about 5 weeks, where they absolutely need to get through any legislation that they want to get through. They absolutely need to get it through before the King makes his speech, because if they don't, it just falls away as if it never happened. So what the King could say is, oh, right, that bit of legislation, it never made it through. It was going through nicely. It never made it through. We'll carry forward that bill. We'll carry forward that bill. So look at carry forward bills. Any private members' bills can't be carried forward. So one to watch out for is this enabling legislation, which is a private members' bill to do with auto-enrollment. Reducing the lower the eligible was it the 22 to 18 and getting rid of the qualifying earnings band. That needs to go through before the King's Speech. Otherwise, that's just lost. And what will be in the King's Speech? It's going to be, we're probably in the last year of this current government. So I can't imagine the King is going to stand up and say in a speech written by the government, we're going to put up income tax, we're going to raise national insurance, we're going to do away with this, we're going to do away with that. I can't imagine. This is a time for the government to say nice things to the electorate because they want to be elected. They're fearful of their jobs. They want their jobs back at the time of the next general election. So I think it's the King's Speech. Carry forward bills, we've got to look for those. The progress up to the King's Speech, getting these private members' bills through. If they government bills, they can be carried over. And then it's fulfilling all of the things that were in the manifesto that haven't yet been done. Oh God, I can talk for ages.
I know you like to talk about this one. Okay. Next, I said I would come back to one of the questions from the chat. So, Melanie has asked, what causes HMRC to duplicate an employee's record? So I can take that one. So, HMRC uses certain data fields to match an employee to the FPS. Match the employee on the FPS to the data that they hold. So there are 4 fields. There is the employee name, which must be their full name. You can't shorten it. It can't be nicknames. We need their gender. So male or female, we have to report a gender, and it should be the one that they use, that they're documented with at HMRC. A date of birth, and we can't just make it up because we don't know what it is. We must get their actual date of birth and the first 2 lines of their address. Additionally, if at all, if we can get the national insurance number, we should supply that, because that is the unique indicator that HMRC can use to match an employee. So although it's not a mandatory field on the full payment submission, it's still really important that you try to get it. Otherwise, if any of that information is incorrect, then you end up with a duplicated record, and it can cause all kinds of discrepancies that usually take a while to resolve.
Don't always cause a duplicate employment, but HMRC say suspiciously could cause a duplicate employment. So if you've got John Smith in your first FPS, and then you say, oh, I don't want to be called John, I want to be called Johnny. And then your second FPS, you say Johnny Smith. What HMRC systems could do is say, we've got a John Smith and we've got a Johnny Smith. I must be a separate person, and create another employment.
Yeah.
You know, as much matching data you can get consistently as possible is best. And your current gender, always put male or female. There's no X at the moment. You can either be a male or a female until you get this gender recognition. I was going to say gender neutral certificate. Gender recognition certificate. Yeah.
Okay. My second question is, an employee said they have a student loan repayment plan type 3, but why is it not on the starter checklist? Ian, do you want to answer that one?
Why isn't it on the starter checklist? They changed postgraduate loan to be called Plan 3 from the start of this tax year, I think it was. This tax year, I think they changed it. And at the same time as they introduced Plan 5, so now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is nice and simple. You've got none of this PGL stuff. Why hasn't the starter checklist been changed? HMRC. So I sit on the Student Loans Forum with HMRC, representing the Institute for Chartered Accountants for England and Wales, in fact. And they're aware that it needs to be done, but they don't quite know how to do it. The palaver at the moment about student loans on the back, it's page 2, isn't it? The palaver, you'll have a Plan 1 loan if you did this and you had blonde hair and you sort of like you wore a white blouse on this date, and you'll have a Plan 2 loan. It's so complicated at the moment. Plan 5 is going to even complicate things further. And I did say to HMRC, at the time you change PGL to Plan 3, you might as well put in Plan 5, which actually first Plan 5 loans are issued from today. Yeah, 1st of August to borrowers from England. So it will be there, and we will be working on that. But it doesn't seem to be a great deal of urgency at HMRC, to be quite honest.
I think, I was going to say that with postgraduate loan, it was always quite easy to know, okay, postgraduate loan can be taken in addition to a student loan. But now that postgraduate loan is being renamed to Plan Type 3, you have to remember, okay, you can take a Plan Type 3 in addition to Plan Type 1. So I think that makes it more confusing now. But I can understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 makes
possibly, but that's the good thing about software, because software will have in it, you'll try and put in 1 and 2, and it will say, oh no, either 1 or either 2. You'll put in 2 and 3, and software will have it programmed. Oh yeah, you can have an undergraduate loan and a postgraduate loan, so I'll take the deductions, 1 at 9% and 1 at 6%. So that's where software comes in.
Yeah,
I agree. Postgraduate loan, I suppose it did stick out as being different. and it did really say, the rest of them are undergraduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it did. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Okay, let's have a look. So this one, I think I can cover this. I feel like, have I covered this one already? No, I haven't. Okay. So HMRC will soon be, the question is, which declaration and which tax code do we use if an employee doesn't complete a starter checklist? So HMRC are going to soon be communicating with employers to address this issue. A lot of employers are using the incorrect starter declarations and the incorrect tax codes. It relates specifically to where an employee has either not completed the starter checklist at all, or they've completed it but they haven't selected a statement. HMRC estimate that there are over 1 million new starters currently on the wrong tax code because of this. So the correct process is that if the starter declaration provided by the employee is not statement A, which is that's my only employment this year, it's not statement B, which is this is my only employment now, then you need to use statement C. Usually statement C indicates that the employee has a second job, but in this case we don't know. So if they tick statement C, then you can use tax code BR. But if they don't select anything at all, you need to use statement C, but on a 0T week 1 month 1 basis. I hope that makes sense.
And that is the problem that HMRC are saying. They're saying what employers are doing. And I wonder if some of their software is actually defaulting to the fact of BR. I wonder if software maybe is to blame, but employers are saying, well, I haven't got a starter checklist. What tax code do I put them on? Obviously, you would put them on C, the starter declaration, because there can't be an A and there can't be a B. And you've only got one other option. So it must be a C. If they don't complete it or they don't tick anything, you put them on 0T. If they do say I've got another job or whatever it is, or I'm receiving a pension, CBR. Otherwise, C0T. Sorry.
No, that's good. Okay, I haven't got any more questions. I can see Carla's typing though. We'll just see if Carla has a question. If anybody else has any questions as well, we've got 4 minutes, so feel free to pop one in the chat.
Yeah, get them in. Oh, excuse me. I get so excited talking about payroll, especially when people ask questions. It's really good because if somebody asks a question, I always used to say when I used to do teaching, if you've got a question, don't be shy, because if you've got it, someone else is thinking it. So don't be shy. You've got to be brave enough to stick your hand up. So it's really good to get questions, because you won't be alone. Other people are going to be thinking it. No one's going to think, oh, for goodness sake.
I say that as well. We have people in our team who don't have a lot of payroll knowledge, and I say to them, if you're asking the question, somebody else is going to be asking it, so I need to be answering that question as well. So I know that if I'm creating technical documentation, that's a really good question to answer in the documentation, so it helps me as well.
Absolutely.
We have Laura typing. Kathleen says she's really enjoyed the session and will look forward to attending one again. That's great.
Oh,
that's good to hear. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'll just close off. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us today, and for those who've asked us questions as well, including those pre-submitted questions. I hope that what we've shared is going to be really useful for you. I'll let you drop off, but if you think of any other questions, you know how to reach us. If you're using PayFit, you can reach out via the Help Centre and our customer care team will get back to you. You will all receive a link to the recording after the webinar is ended. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon, and I hope you'll meet us back here for the next Payroll Power Hour. And thank you very much, Ian, for everything.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm privileged. I'm privileged to be asked. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.